This is going to be a brief supplemental video to my last response to the CES letter talking about issue number 6, Archeology. There were a few small, minor comments that I'd wanted to make, but they made the response too long, and so I'm going to put them here. Just a few comments on what they say and what they claim in this issue. So it states here, the last battle between the Lamanites and Nephites around 400 AD claimed at least 230,000 deaths on the Nephite side alone. Now this is an error of the, it does not accurately portray the record of the Book of Mormon. What they're doing here is that in Mormon chapter 6, Mormon lists all those captains that fell in battle, and he lists 23 captains and states that they fell with their 10,000 men. So what they're doing is they're taking 23, multiplying by 10,000, that's 230,000. The problem with this is that right at the beginning of this list, the first two captains listed are Mormon and Moroni, who we know survived. He also states that there were 24 who survived with them, that were all gathered together. When he's looking out and seeing all the destruction, there were 24 people with him. So clearly, it wasn't at least 230,000. And in addition to this, we're told that many Nephites had fled. Some had defected to the Lamanites. So this was not at least 230,000 people. It was at most 230,000 people. Now this is a minor point, but it shows the laziness of their arguments, of what they're trying to say here. They are misrepresenting the very text that they're trying to argue against. They are not being accurate to what the Book of Mormon says, and then they are arguing against their inaccuracies, not against the text itself. And as I say, this particular point is a minor issue, but the details are important. Now if we go down here again, a couple paragraphs down, it talks about the Romans, and then it talks about the Mayans and Aztecs. Now we have these civilizations. Then it mentions here, says additionally there is ample evidence of the Mayan and Aztec civilizations, as well as a civilization in current-day Texas that dates back at least 15,000 years. Another recent discovery has been made of a 14,000-year-old village in Canada. Now, me personally, anytime somebody claims a time period greater than 6,000 years, then I immediately say, no, that's wrong. The Bible, the scriptures, tell us that the earth is only approximately 6,000 years old. I've done an in-depth analysis of the timeline in the Bible and the book, using the dates we have from all the scriptures, putting them together. And from my calculations, I believe the fall would have happened around the year 3077, I believe it was, possibly 97 BC. So you're talking maybe 6,000 years ago. So anytime that they want to use these 15,000 and 14,000 year old dates as evidence against the Book of Mormon, that is something that I just say, it doesn't matter because you're wrong, because we didn't exist. Mortal life began 6,000 years ago. Therefore, anything beyond that is, any claims beyond that time is human error. It's as simple as that. My last point is this last thing here where they talk about Thomas Stewart Ferguson. They say he was, as they point out, he was a founding member of the New World Archaeological Foundation. But then they make this statement that the NWAF was financed by the LDS Church, and the NWAF and Ferguson were tasked by BYU and the church in the 1950s and 60s to find archaeological evidence to support the Book of Mormon. This is a false, misleading statement. The NWAF was a private organization that was founded partly by Thomas Stewart Ferguson. He was one of the I think there were 5 founding members. He was not an archaeologist. He was a fundraiser and secretary to the group. He did approach the church for funding in the early 1950s. I can't remember exactly what year, but at first the church denied his request. They said, no, we're not going to do it. The next year, after his persistence, they agreed to give him $50,000 to help fund this organization. They were not the only sponsors. They were not the only people donating money. And yes, it was Ferguson's idea that they could use archaeology to prove the Book of Mormon. This was not a task set him by the church. It was he came to the church and said, I think I can prove the Book of Mormon through archaeology, and I would like you to help fund our research. They gave him $50,000. After 17 years, approximately, as they say, they hadn't found anything, but the church was very much displeased with Ferguson's approach and the way he was doing things, which is why the church then bought the NWAF and added it to BYU, made it the BYU Archaeological Division. But it was only after Ferguson had failed, had displayed a poor methodology in his research and his presentations. Even his own co-workers, the other members of the foundation, said that he didn't really know what he was talking about and his approach to archaeology was all wrong. So the claims that this was created by the church, that it was financed by the church, that it was tasked by the church to do these things is completely false. And it is put in here in a disingenuous attempt to discredit the church itself. The only reason for this is to try and put the blame for his failure on the church so that the church itself can be discredited and not him personally. He did fail. His methodology was poor. He had a crisis of faith, but that had nothing to do with the church itself. Anyways, I just wanted to give those 4 supplemental points to what they said in this issue. So, hopefully you enjoyed it, and tune in for my next response, which will hopefully be coming out next week.